Hello. If you browse YouTube, you find many videos named How to Make Frit. After watching these videos, you may conclude that this is a simple task. Initially, I also thought that this was easy, but I couldn't answer the question: if it's so easy, why do glass manufacturers produce and sell Frit? So I decided to make my own tests and share the results with you. It's obvious that Frit is just a crushed glass. The task is to crush it easily and to keep its purity. I suppose you all agree with the first statement, while the second needs to be clarified. We use Frit for various purposes, but regardless of them, Frit will be melted and fused with other glass. If while making Frit you add some foreign particles, your Frit may change its color or even become incompatible with the other glass. There are two ways of crushing glass: mechanical and thermal. In thermal method, glass experiences thermal shock during a rapid change of its temperature and breaks. Mechanical method assumes that glass breaks after being impacted with something rigid and heavy. All the videos which I found use either one of these methods or both. Let's look at them and validate the statements their authors made. And we start from the statement 1. If you heat glass to a high temperature and then drop it into the cold water, it will break and you get Frit. So let's try. I took a stainless steel mesh basket, filled it with clear glass scrap, and put it into the kiln. Then I heated the kiln up to 1000 degrees Fahrenheit or 540 degrees Celsius. This temperature is high enough to cause high strain during rapid cooling, but it's not high to tack glass pieces together. Then I took the basket out of the kiln and placed it in the bucket with the cold water. Let the basket and glass in the cool to the room temperature. It may require some time. Let's look at the result of this thermal shock. All the pieces in the basket preserved their shapes and didn't break into multiple shards. But if you take any piece, you see that it is full of small cracks. It's very easy to break it with your fingers. So this glass became even more fragile, but you still need to impact it mechanically to get Frit. Does it mean that the first statement is false? Well, I found one video in which the author gets Frit after thermal shock without mechanical impact. In this video, the author uses gas burner to heat a glass rod until it softens. Then, she squeezes the heated end to form a thin disc and heats this disc again. After placing this disc in cold water, it breaks into multiple shards. I tried to reproduce this method with the sheet glass. After heating a piece of this crackled glass to the temperature at which it started bending, I placed it in cold water. As you see, the heated area broke in multiple shards. So this method works, but it is not productive. So generally speaking, the thermal shock doesn't make Frit by itself, but it helps in producing Frit by mechanical impacting. Indeed, glass is already full of internal cracks, so you need to apply less force to break a piece of glass into small shards. Now let's talk about the second statement. You can use a powerful grinder to crush glass and make frit and powder. There are multiple videos in which authors fill grinders with glass and just in a few seconds get frit of all possible sizes, including powder. These videos are very popular and have hundreds of likes. Let me doubt the results. We all know that glass is harder than steel. You can easily scratch steel plates with a piece of glass, but you cannot scratch glass with a sharp steel stick. So what happens inside the grinder? Let's look inside. You see these steel blades. They rotate at a very high speed, 36,000 rotations per minute. If you insert glass into this chamber and switch the grinder on, the blades will obviously crush the glass. But this is a two-way process. Glass also damages the blades by cutting out tiny metal pieces. You may ask, and so what? I will reply, you got a dirty frit contaminated with steel dust. Let me demonstrate this. I loaded several glass pieces into the grinder and switched it on just for a few seconds. Let's look inside. I wear a protective mask to avoid inhaling glass dust. As you can see, there are still several larger shards coated with glass powder. As you remember, it was a clear glass. Its powder is white. This powder is gray because it mixed with steel dust. Let's prove this. I use a strong neodymium magnet to mix the powder for several seconds. Now look at the magnet. I zoomed in. You can clearly see tiny steel particles. Most of the videos describing this method of frit making don't even mention this contamination with metal. So, frit made with the grinder is dirty and not applicable for fusing. Now let's check the next statement. Some people insist that they remove steel dust with strong magnets. Let's check this. I took a strong neodymium magnet and put it inside this jar with the frit. Then I carefully shake the jar. You see that the magnet is coated with all this dust. I cleaned it, and you see this dust on the napkin. Believe me, I did the same about 20 times. At the end, there were almost no dust on the magnet, but the powder remains gray. I took another magnet, large and strong, the one which is used for garbage fishing. Look at this picture. Surprisingly, glass powder is stuck to the magnet. But glass itself is not magnetic. The only explanation is that these small glass particles are coated with steel dust. This dust makes them gray and adds magnetism. I'm joking. You may say that this is probably not critical. Look, there is a well-known way of reducing the probability of devitrification by sifting clear powder on top of glass. I took a piece of white glass, sifted this cleaned powder on one half of the piece to compare halves after fusing. In this picture, you see the result. The sifted half looks dirty. So it's not possible to clean frit even with a strong magnet. The third statement is false, and I can draw a conclusion that a grinder is not applicable for making powder. What another tool can be used for making frit? Let's consider this tool, which is widely available in many glass stores. As you can see, there are two metal tubes. One is inserted into another. The top tube has a handle for convenience. To make frit, you fill the bottom tube with glass pieces, then insert the top tube and crush glass by dropping it down. Did you notice a key word, metal tubes? So once again, the frit made with this device will contain metal fillings. Fortunately, if you use glass after thermal shock, there will be much less metal dust than when using a grinder, and it's possible to remove most of them with a magnet included in the set. Finally, does it mean that it's not possible to make frit without metal fillings? No, it doesn't. All you need to do is to fully exclude any metals from the process. The easiest way is to place glass in the cloth bag or between two cloths and use something heavy to crush glass inside the bag. This method allows you to make clean frit without metal contamination. But you need to be careful and do not use the same bag multiple times to avoid appearance of lint and mixing it with frit. After crushing glass, you need to separate it into fractions. I used this set of Frit sifters, which is available in many glass stores. Initially, I inserted all of them one into another so that the thinnest mesh is in the very bottom. I filled the top sifter with the crushed glass and started shaking it. As you see, only large and extra large pieces remain in this sifter. All smaller particles dropped in the next sifter. Now I am shaking this sifter to separate larger particles. All smaller shards drop down into the third sifter. Then I do the same with the third sifter, and finally I separate the smallest particles by shaking the last sifter. Now there are 5 buckets with mosaic, coarse, medium, fine and powder frit. Powder frit looks a bit unusual. It's clean and white, but let's compare it with the powder frit produced by Oceanside Glass and Tie. So I take this powder from OGT jar and put it in one heap. The powder frit which I just made I put in the second heap. Let me move the camera closer to the heaps. Hope you can see many relatively large particles in the self-made powder. I would say this powder differs from the one I've bought, and it's coarser. This may be fine for many applications, but not for all. In conclusion, I would say that yes, it's possible to make frit yourself, but this option should be considered as a last resort. For example, you can use it if you urgently need a bit of frit which you don't have, or if you need to make a frit with a special or unique color. In all other cases, it's better to buy frit.